live, something goes wrong. I have terrible luck with live streams, so I'm going to sit here and watch and just make sure that everything comes to life like I expect it to. Hit me up in comments now, chat now, if you can hear me and you can see me okay. And once I know that I'm live and things are not bombing out on me like they always do, I will make sure that we dive into this. Okay, so things look like they're going well with the live stream at this point, so let's just jump right into this, shall we? What a week it's been. Oh my gosh, what a week it's been. I committed fully to going for my CCIE. I've got the time, I've got the bandwidth, I'm ready, I've got the energy, I've got the motivation. And so many people reached out to inspire me and motivate me and tell me just really kind words of motivation, offered to help. And I cannot thank you all enough. In fact, that's one of the key tools towards going for your CCIE is having a community, a support group around you. And we are going to talk about that in just a second. Let me first wrap up by telling you how the week went. I committed to it on Monday, and then I went through some things to make sure that I'm making progress towards it. I am recording BGP content for the NRC exam, and I like to think that I'm going just a layer beyond what the NRC exam calls for, and I think that actually helps towards preparation for your CCIE. So let me talk to you about that in just a moment. Already got a good question. Can I know what your timeline is for the CCIE? I'd love to knock it out in a year. And I talked about that when we broke down the exam outline on Wednesday. So I think that goes into the next thing. I made a couple other videos that showed progress towards it this week. I think that was cool. We broke down the exam topics. I'm going to talk about that again in just a moment. And then I also sat in the webinar where they explained what the actual lab environment is like now. 2 24-inch monitors, multi-tab terminal connections, the exact exam formats, the types of questions, and I created a live stream about that too. So next week, I think, is going to be the big week. Next week, they have a webinar on Wednesday about what the exam content actually is, what's on the exam, and how to prepare for it. So let's jump into some demos here and talk about what tools I'm using to make this stuff work. Let's jump over to the screen and bring up some pages. Okay, first things first is a community. You need to have a support group. You need to be having these people who are motivating you and sharing the journey with you, going through the same things. You can see right here, I made a post last night on the CCIE Reddit page. Let me change my color real quick so that way you can actually see this. There we go. Much better. Right here, I made that post saying that I'm starting my CCIE journey, and I think it's going to be really cool. A lot of people started communicating and chatting with me about how I'm preparing for it, and that's what this video is all about. The next thing that I'm doing to share my CCIE journey with the community is the CBT Nuggets community. If you're a CBT Nuggets subscriber, there is a Slack community. You can go to cbtnuggets.com/community, and you can join in, and it's categorized by topics and people who are in there, and they're just, a lot of time they're just, shooting the gun and hanging out, but they're also talking a lot about like the Encore exam. There's even a couple CCIEs in here who are checking stuff out, and you can share running configs, what's happening here and what's going on. Great place to communicate with other people. All right, books. That's been a big question, is what books am I using to prepare Encore? I think this goes without saying. You have to take the Encore exam in order to get ready for CCIE. So as soon as I'm finishing up with my NRC recording, I'm going to be focusing on this Encore book. I already feel pretty good about the content that's on Encore. I watched a lot of the CBT Nuggets as they were being produced, and these topics are, quite frankly, in my wheelhouse. I want to take the Encore exam within the next 3 months. All of this stuff does kind of depend on how quarantine shakes out where I am. We got hit pretty hard by coronavirus, so quarantine. I'm expecting our home's quarantine to go into July, but that shouldn't stop me from being able to read. As soon as my kiddos go down for bed, I tend to do some pretty hefty reading and some labbing. So Encore is up first. Next is the NRC textbook. I've already read a lot of this textbook, and I think it's pretty interesting. I feel like this textbook goes beyond what the exam topics list. And quite frankly, that falls right in line with how I'm recording my CBT Nuggets too. For instance, if I jump over to the exam topics for an RC, like right here under BGP, you can see it says route reflectors excluding multiple route reflectors, confederations, dynamic peer. I'm recording about multiple route reflectors and confederations. There's not much extra to them. They are real world scenarios. Quite frankly, I think they're pretty cool. So if you go through the CBT Nuggets content, or if you're reading this textbook to support the CBT Nuggets content, or they kind of complement each other, you'll find out pretty quickly that these things do go a little bit beyond what the exam calls for, but really that just makes you a more well-rounded network engineer and more prepared for the exam. So an RC textbook, really like this textbook. I made a post on Twitter earlier this week. I think this exam, out of all the CCNP exams, is the most intimidating. Unless you've just spent a long time studying routing and switching and services. But I feel like this will probably be one of the more difficult exams that I tackle in this progress. All right, next textbook, SD-WAN. This book comes out in August. Super excited to get my hands on this. That also falls right around the timeline that I'm hoping to start recording the ENSDW, the SD-WAN exam course for CBT Nuggets. A couple other trainers have expressed interest in recording that with me, so I'm excited about that. But yeah, this textbook, there's a lot of new software-defined networking on the CCIE blueprint, so I think this book is going to be critical for success there, along with software-defined access. And a few places I've posted that this is the topic that I'm most stressed about, and that's the absolute truth. I am most stressed about software-defined access and DNA Center because it's very hard to get your hands on DNA Center and software-defined access. Unless you're already in an enterprise that has it and they're going to allow you to jack up your environment while you learn, this is the thing that I'm most concerned about. There is the DevNet sandbox, and we're going to talk about the DevNet sandbox in just a moment, so I'll save that. Next up, we've got the design textbook. Now, earlier this week when I set out on my journey, I was kind of like, yeah, design's cool. I'll read this book. It'll probably help. I won't even take the test. Not the case anymore. After sitting in the webinar and learning about the new CCIE format, the first module of the exam is strictly design. So previously there were two modules. You had, maybe design and deploy, and then there was troubleshoot, and you had to pass both. Well, now it's design is its own module, and then there's deploy, operate, optimize is the second module, and you have to pass both of these. So this to me is CCIE, the people who developed the CCIE, saying we are putting a real emphasis on just design. You need to be able to design a good network. So I am going to read this book thoroughly and definitely sit the exam for that. I'd also love to record the content for CBT Nuggets for that exam too. TCP IP Volume 1, second edition. Ton of people recommended this book, so bought it. I bought all these books. Cisco Press made a lot of money off of me in the past couple weeks. So, yep, there's this one. And then, of course, Volume 2. Got that one too. I think both of those books come in to me this weekend. And then the last textbook here is the Internet Routing Architecture. This is just a book on basically BGP. So it's going to help fill in a lot of those BGP gaps if there are any after reading an RC. The NRC textbook is pretty thorough, though. I feel pretty good after reading the BGP content. So these are books, and we've got books and community laid out here, people that I can talk to, books that I can read. How am I taking notes when I read these books? Good old-fashioned highlighter. I don't have a digital app. I'm not using like OneNote or an iPad Pro or anything like that. It's just how I am. I don't like reading from Kindle. I don't like reading from screens. My eyes aren't what they used to be. So I buy the books, I take notes, I highlight as I go along. Now it's to the actual tools and the labs themselves. First up is the DevNet Sandbox. This is free. It's devnetsandbox.cisco.com. Log in with your GitHub account because I know you've all followed the DevNet content and got a GitHub account so you could practice the Git repositories and things like that. DNA Center, again, this is the one where I was like, okay, how are we going to do this? There are reservable DNA Center environments right here. The always-on DNA Center environments are read-only. You can click around in them, but you can't actually deploy anything. You can't actually change anything. So the always-on sandboxes are great to get familiar with them. Not so great when you actually want to practice things that are probably going to be on the exam environment. My stress levels are elevated because the DNA Center all reservable sandboxes are like chronically reserved. Like once someone reserves them, you can't really... Look what happened to my pen. This keeps happening to me. You can see it says this contains a resource that is currently unavailable. So if you go to reserve the DNA sandboxes, it'll tell you when it's next available. And in my experience, they've always been reserved for like weeks in advance. You can only reserve it at like 3 a.m. or something like that. So that makes it a little more challenging. Also here is the SD-WAN sandboxes, and I believe they are creating a new SD-WAN sandbox. I think it's coming out soon. There's an always-on version of it, and then the reservable one, again, that you can change and hack up. Through the DevNet course and the Inauto course, I heavily leaned on this reservable sandbox, so that we could show you how you can automate specific tasks with post requests, put requests, and so on. So, again, Cisco, thank you for providing this to us. Beyond that, there's like Cisco iOS XE, there's NSO, there's a lot of things that you can get familiar with here when it comes to prepping for your stuff. This is free to use. It spins up an actual environment that you can use. I think that's just really incredible. And just about every platform is covered. Over here on the right-hand side, you see they got data center, collaboration, security, and so on. So really, really cool that that is there. Again, the thing that I'm most worried about is DNA Center. And that's why I'm excited about next week's webinar when they talk about how you prepare for the exam, what's the prep like, and I want to ask them, like, what do you recommend for people with SD Access and DNA Center who can't get their hands on that? So, interesting. Now, of course, EVE-NG. I just absolutely, I'm obsessed with this tool right now. I absolutely love it. It can, if you have the correct licensing, and you are entitled to the QCal images, basically the images of the Cisco device, this thing can run it. So if there's like Firepower, SD-WAN, CUCM, like I've seen other people posting their topologies where they run all of these platforms in a virtualized environment, and they can now work with these devices. So I'm using this right now because I'm highly focused on BGP and some other things like MPLS Layer 3 VPN. Like my Hello World topology here, I can open this up. This is how I'm focused on, labbing this stuff up right now. So, just to kind of show you what I did here, this little LAN internet section, this is how I actually bridge all of these devices out to my network. You can right click on the topology, add a network, and then choose, which network you want to use. So I chose the management network here, and that's how I get it out to my physical network. So this computer can SSH into these devices, or better, run the Ansible playbooks. These red connections here these are the out-of-band management so that I can access these devices over SSH. Following tips from IPv0, I created a VRF on each one of these devices. So when I'm actually labbing and I'm looking at the routing tables, the out-of-band management isn't there. Also, the networks aren't shared through interior gateway protocols like OSPF and EIGRP. So that's really cool. And every day, let me bring up VS Code for a second. When I start this lab up, I don't want to go through the same steps of typing the interface name, then IP address, then enabling OSPF. I want to build a base topology, and that is where my Ansible playbooks come into play. So on my GitHub, where there's code samples, you can see I've got Lab 1, Lab 2, Lab 3. We're looking at Lab 1 right now. This is Lab 1. And I built a, playbook here that SSHs into each one of these devices, sets their loopback addresses, sets their interface IP addresses, and then enables OSPF on these specific interfaces that I cared about. The actual interface IPs are all in host vars here, and the connection credentials are all in group vars here. So I fire up Windows Subsystem for Linux by just typing WSL. It's all going on behind me. And then I navigate to my Ansible playbook, I run my playbook, and it stands up my lab topology. So from here, everything has the addresses, and I can dig into practicing BGP and MPLS Layer 3 VPN. Yeah, can't speak highly enough about EVE-NG. This tool is amazing. It was not terribly hard to set up. I am running this on an ESXi server, a Dell R710. Bought it off eBay for a few $100. And I installed it using an ISO. I couldn't use the OVA template because my version of ESXi was too low. but I did install it with an ISO, took a few minutes, and then I was up and running with EVE-NG. So fantastic resources there. Yeah, I think that just about covers all of the ways that I'm preparing. My strategy, as of right now, is still take the Encore exam and then dig into the concentration exams, these electives that I like to call them, because I feel like they go into the topics deeper, almost to a CCIE level. Some of them are a little shy of the CCIE level. Like, for instance, on NARSI, there's, under VPN technologies, there's describe MPLS layer 3 VPN, whereas when you actually look at the CCIE blueprint, it is implement MPLS layer 3 VPN. But at least at this point, I'll have a good familiarity with it. I feel like the NRC textbook covers this very well. And Keith Barker, when he recorded his nuggets on MPLS Layer 3 VPN, you implement MPLS Layer 3 VPN. And there's a virtual lab to accompany it too, which is really cool. So, yeah, those are the tools that I'm using. That's the progress I've made this week. Let me jump over to chat and see. Whoa, there's a lot of chat that went on here. Let's see. Somebody just passed Encore a few weeks back. Congratulations to you. That's awesome. Starting the NRC path. I think that's really cool. Why not sign up for Riley online? So again, that goes back to, I really hate reading digital books. That's just a personal preference. It's bad on my eyes. I don't like looking at a little screen or even or like an iPad size thing. I gotta have the physical book, flipping pages and highlighting pages. I guess I'm just old school like that. But that's how I learn. It's softer on my eyes. It's better on my brain. So there's that. Preparing for Encore. Got CBT Nuggets in the Cisco Press book. Just trying to figure out the best path. Aren't we all, right? We are all in it together, man. I think that's really cool. Got to tell you, I really loved an auto. I loved that exam. I loved studying for it. I loved recording it. Don't overlook that because it also counts towards your DevNet professional. So, you get your Encore, your in auto, then you've only got DevCore to go to get DevNet Professional. So that's pretty cool too. Let's see. That's how you prepared for Encore. We've got, I think it would be super cool if you could record videos for the lab part for SD-WAN DNA. Absolutely planning on recording the SD-WAN course for CBT Nuggets. If they'll let me, I have also inquired about recording the SD Access content too. Going to be tricky to see how we do it. Probably a lot of DevNet Sandbox or dCloud in that environment where we're demoing DNA Center. Maybe I can get my hands on some actual hardware to demo it, but that's a bridge we can cross when we get to that point. But yeah, a couple people have reached out already and said the software-defined networking is their big stressor when preparing for CCIE, and they would love to see content recorded on that. I can tell you that it's on the way. I'm probably going to finish the NARSI recording next week or the week after. Hopefully I'll be done with it next week. I have some commitments to Azure content. I'm going to be recording some AZ204 and some AZ304 content, as well as I would like to tackle the DA100. That's the new Power BI course that sets up for a late summer, early fall start for SD-WAN recording. And then, I can tell you I'm the type of guy who, I blitz this recording. I try to get it done as quick as I can so it can get into your hands as quickly as possible. So when I sit down and record SD-WAN, I'm going to be banging it out. So that's going to be awesome. Dell server specs. It is a Dell R710. It has two 6-core processors, so 24 threads, and 64 gigs of RAM. If you're poking around on eBay, you can find a comparable Dell R720 now, so newer processors. You could probably scoop that up for $350, $400 without storage. My recommendations to you there is when you buy a Dell R720, get one with at least 12 cores, so two 6-core processors, get one with at least 64 gigs of RAM, and get one that has 3.5-inch drive bays. A lot of these servers come with just 2.5-inch drive bays for these SAS disks. I highly recommend getting one with 3.5-inch drive bays. If you have SSDs, like 2.5-inch drives, you can buy an adapter. They have like a little adapter that goes in the 3.5-inch drive bay that just shrinks it down to 2.5-inch, so it works great. And then you've got the ability to do both 3.5-inch and 2.5-inch discs. So you could do like two SSDs in RAID 1, That way you've got some fast storage, and then you can do like 2 3.5-inch drives, 4 terabytes in RAID 1 as well. And then well, you've got some, spinning disk with heavy storage too. So I think that's pretty cool. Yep, let's see. Multicast included in Encore. That is a great question. I don't, if there was multicast in Encore, it was more like just know about it. I don't think there was any implement, whereas in RC, there was multicast. And Keith Barker recorded that as well. I don't recall seeing, let's take a look real quick. I've got the exam blueprint here in front of me. Let's take a look. EIGRP, layer 2, layer 3, IP services. There's describe multicast protocols. So it's a describe, that's a know about them. It's not an implement or configure. So you would want to know about them. And it's recommended, like, why not just watch the NRC Nuggets? Even if you're not planning on taking the test, if you just watch the Nuggets, you're now just a step more well-versed in these topics. So that's always kind of been my strategy, is just take it a step a little bit further. That way, when you roll into the exam, you're like, oh yeah, I know this. I actually know how to do beyond that. So that's my thoughts on preparation there. Any more questions before we wrap up today? Yeah, I mean, I really can't wait for next week. Next week is going to be a big week for me because I'm going to try and wrap up an RC recording on the BGP content, as well as troubleshooting with DNA Center Assurance. Yeah. How hard is the exam comparing old versus the new exam pattern? Well, so are you talking about CCIE or CCNP? That's the real question. I've heard very mixed things. I've heard the Encore exam is, challenging and thorough, but you'll find more challenging exams with like NRC. When I take it, I'll let you know. As far as the CCIE exam, I'm sure the CCIE exam is a CCIE exam. I'm sure it's very challenging. The environment itself has changed, though, giving you 2 monitors and multiple tabs that you can work with on consoles to, I think, support you and help you out a little bit better. Maybe it'll make it less of a time crunch exam and more of a, like, how much do you know exam. So, again, once I take all these exams, I will record videos or go live and just let you know my impressions of the exam. When I passed DevAsk, DevCore, and InAuto, I went live on those, and without, violating the NDA on those, I told you exactly my thoughts about the exams when it came to challenges. Things like the DevCore exam really caught me off guard because it's a 2-hour exam, 102 questions. 1 hour into it, I was on like question 30. So it's like, wow, this is a time crunch exam. My strategy has to change right now. So yeah, if you're interested in DevAsk, DevCore, or InAuto, go watch those live streams that I did where I talked about my thoughts on how those exam environments really work. Cool. So I'm going to wrap up there. This was a great live stream. Again, I cannot thank you all enough for your support, for reaching out and motivating me, inspiring me. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get there. Yeah, I can't wait. I really can't wait. I'm so excited. Cool. That's what I'll wrap up. I'm going to go record some BGP nuggets right now for CBT Nuggets. Y'all have a good one. Stay safe. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you in the next one.